Live from the Business Radio X studio inside Renaissance Bank, the bank that specializes in understanding you. It's time for North Fulton Business Radio.
And good morning, everyone. Welcome to yet another edition of North Fulton Business Radio. I'm John Ray, and we are coming to you from our virtual studio in Alpharetta. We're not in our usual spot in Renaissance Bank for social distancing reasons, but we hope to be back soon, and we'll keep you informed on that. We've got a great guest today I've been looking forward to, Neeti Dewan. Neeti is with Global Platinum AdvantEdge, and we'll get to Neeti in just a second. But I'd like to remind you that if you need some help with administrative tasks that involve bookkeeping, marketing, maybe you need some presentations prepared, maybe you need a Zoom workshop prepared. That's going around these days. Well, I've got an answer for you that could be helpful. Office Angels. They are not a temp agency or a placement firm. Office Angels has a talented angel who flies in with talent and experience to help you maintain and grow your business. They've been operating virtually since the beginning, 18 years now. Chief Executive Angel Essie Escobedo is at your service, 770-442-9246, or go to officeangels.us for more information. And now we welcome Neeti Dewan. Neeti is the CEO of Global Platinum AdvantEdge. Neeti, welcome.
Thank you, John.
It's so great to have you.
My pleasure.
So tell us a little bit about you and your company. How do you serve the world out there?
Sure. So my company, Global Platinum AdvantEdge, serves startups to mid-sized companies in the areas of bookkeeping, tax planning, as well as outsourced CFO services to some of the larger clients. And many of your listeners may be familiar with the timeshare concept. So this is very similar to that. I provide the timeshares of financial planning and financial statements to my clients. The other piece of my business is the executive Yogi, where I provide trainings to companies and groups of individuals on how to balance stress in life and strive to be very successful in both your personal as well as professional life.
Wow. So you provide, you're very unusual in a good way, I mean, because you're really after the complete rounding out of the entrepreneur and their business, right?
Absolutely. I'm a big believer that unless you conquer your mind, your body, and your spirit, you can't conquer the world, which is the world of business. So you've got to know who you are as a person. And once you control that piece of it, you can easily control the success of your business as well as your career. Well,
I'm going to conclude this interview so I can hire you and let's talk. But no, seriously, that's a problem for most people. So, I mean, most entrepreneurs, because they spend generally way too much time on their business per se, not enough time on themselves. Let's let that float out there for a second, but let's talk about the CPA, the outside CFO part of your business, I should say. And let's talk about the current environment that business owners are working in, the COVID-19 environment. What are the priorities that you see for business owners right now?
Yeah, great question, John. So, a lot of the businesses were shut down for some time. Many of them were operating at a very small capacity. So we know that all businesses have been hurt financially to some extent. The government has come up with many different plans to basically help these businesses and be able to sustain over the next year. Some of the things that I do want to point out are great programs that if people aren't aware of, they should certainly talk to their CPA or tax person to take advantage of some of these. So, in the news, we have heard about the PPP, which is a Payroll Protection Act, We've heard of the EIDL loans that are available, but there are so many other things that have not been talked about in the media yet. So, for example, if I'm an individual, I'm not a business owner, and I'm an individual who is hurting right now, what are my options? One of the things is that you can dip into your 401k and you don't have to pay it back for 2.5 years. So if you're deciding between, do I charge my living expenses on a credit card versus pulling my 401k, I would recommend people go for the 401k because it's your money. And you can put it back without any penalties or interest. So it's a great avenue for creating cash if you're really hurting. The other thing I'm thinking of is for business owners specifically, there's the payroll tax deferral that's available. So basically it's, the employer side of the OASDI, which you don't have to pay until end of 2021. So that really gives you a little bit more cash in your pockets to deal with all the business issues right now. And you can pay it back by 2021. And then the other half of it is not due until 2022. So that again puts more cash in your pocket. So I'm all about liquidity right now for businesses and how they can stay in business over the next year and not go out of business. So there's also the other thing that's available is, of course, the payroll tax credit. Now, people are talking about, all of these other loan programs, but the payroll tax credit is such a great idea for businesses. So basically, it provides you, I think it's a $5,000 rebate per employee. So for a small business that has about 10 employees, John, that means 10 times 5. That's $50,000 in cash that they can get back to put back into their business right now. The other thing people need to be aware of is that if you are a retailer or you're selling products and you have a sales tax registration, many of the jurisdictions have provided a deferral. Most of the deferrals were for your March and April tax filings and payments, which were due actually this month, May 20th. So if you haven't yet paid that up, now is the time to go ahead and do that. So these are some of the different avenues, John, that are available, which are outside of the general PPP loans that people are talking about, as well as the EIDL, SBA business loan.
Well, one thing, Nita, is I talk to business owners, there seems to be some confusion in some of these plans about the difference between forgiveness and something you got to pay back or something that's getting deferred, right? So just because it's getting deferred does not mean you don't have to pay that obligation, right? Like, for example, the payroll tax deferral, right?
Right. Yeah. All that deferral means is that you don't have to pay it today, but that obligation doesn't go away. You still have to pay back at some future time in the future. So what I'm telling business owners is, if you have the cash flow right now to be able to pay it up. But if you really need to use that money to keep your employees' payroll going and to keep your doors open, then go ahead and use that. You have to be very diligent in your use of these funds because at some point it's going to catch up and you've got to pay.
And this go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. In terms of the forgiveness, there is something available under the Paycheck Protection Plan where as long as these employers use the funds, at least 75% of the funds for keeping their payroll going, paying their employees, paying their rent obligations on the business building, and their overall, rent, healthcare for their workers, and so on, they can apply for a forgiveness of this loan after the deferral period is done. So basically, the interest rate on these PPP loans is 1%. It will keep accruing, but as long as you follow the guidelines and you've used most of the funding that you got for paying your workers and keeping them employed, guess what? All of this loan can be forgiven. But that again goes back to keeping very good records. who did you hire, who stayed on your payroll, how much are you paying them. You can't just give a huge raise to yourself and say, hey, I'm paying myself. That doesn't qualify.
Right. Right. Or like the dude that just got arrested because he bought a bunch of jewelry or something, right? Yeah. But closer to the experience of most people, this is where you come in, because you help folks keep those records and give them the advice on how to manage their cash flow and liquidity during this time.
Absolutely. So with all of these programs that are available out there, the PPP, EIDL, etc., you have to keep very solid business records. And you need a good CPA who can actually do that for you. And especially if you're going to go back to the banks asking for forgiveness of these loans, they have a long set of criteria that you've got to meet to make sure that you qualify. So for that is where I step in, or people like me step in and can help small business owners. The other piece of it is that no matter what, of all this kind of the crisis that's going on with Corona, we are all talking about this moment today, what we need to do in business. But one thing I would tell business owners is that I'm helping them with as well is you might be planning for today, but don't forget to focus on the long term as well. So this crisis too shall pass at some time. And don't give up on thinking about where you're going to go in the future. The financials must be kept current. You have to focus on your customers during this time. You've got to focus on your suppliers because some of the suppliers may not be able to, their supply chains have been disrupted. So they can't get the products to you in time. So are you already lining up new vendors whom you should be talking to right now as a backup? In terms of your workforce, if you had to let people go before these PPP programs, et cetera, were available, and now you're trying to hire back people, you've got to keep in mind that people are also getting their unemployment plus an additional $600 a week that is being thrown in by the federal government to supplement that. Some folks are actually having a tough time calling back their workers. They're upset with their employees. Like, wait a minute, I got to give this up. I'm going to make less when I come back to your job.
Right.
So you really need to focus on that. Make sure that you are being very responsive to your workforce and their needs, and keep planning for the future. I always keep my eyes in the future as to where I want to be, where my business needs to be. And you got to navigate through this crisis, and you will all come out of it, hopefully good in the future.
Folks, we're here chatting with Neeti Dewan, and Neeti is the CEO of Global Platinum AdvantEdge. So I'm curious, Neeti, in your practice, the kinds of companies that you work with, who's a good fit for you?
So a good fit for me would be from startups all the way up to 80 million in revenues annually. So this group of businesses have very unique needs in terms of their financial statements, in terms of their funding necessary, as well as just from a business planning standpoint, very unique needs. So that's kind of my niche where I step in and help these companies. And I'll give you an example, John. So I was talking to one of my clients about a month back. They were hard hit with this COVID. And so we took a pause and said, let's look at every avenue of creating cash flow for us. So we looked at their accounts receivable, and we realized that there were some couple of large customers who had not paid them for quite some time. So they started doing the outreach to those clients, and guess what? Those clients actually paid them. So it was cash in the pocket immediately. The other thing that they did was, this is a large client who had been paying certain excise taxes and sales taxes in many different states. So I came in and looked at all their tax filings for the last 4 years and started looking for loopholes, started to see, is there an opportunity to get some of this tax back? And guess what? Found a certain exemption in the statute, which the client was not aware of, and which most people are not aware of. And they had paid tax to their vendors on this. Huge purchases over the last 4 years. I applied for the refund for them, and my client is getting back $630,000 very soon. It's money that they were not expecting. It's money that they paid in. And so I always tell people, take a look at your sales taxes that you paid. Did you really owe them? Because sometimes vendors don't know if you're using it for exempt purposes, what you bought.
Right.
Maybe you're an exempt entity. And so these things got to be very creative during these times to create that cash flow.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's an awfully intelligent way to think about it, because there are a lot of tax credits, a lot of tax opportunities that have look back provisions, right? And that people maybe have not taken advantage of, that they need to check out, right? I mean, talk a little bit about that. I mean, and specifically for those that don't know what look back is.
Sure. So, with taxes, there's a statute of limitations. So as long as you're filing a tax return every year, the statute stays open for about 4 years. So that means that you as a taxpayer can go back and claim refunds of any overpayments that you might have made. But on the other hand, the government, the IRS, and the state taxing jurisdictions can also come back and audit you for those 5 years to see if there was a deficiency and that you might owe more taxes. So that window is always there. And John, that reminds me, with this CARES Act, one other provision that was added relates to the net operating losses. So with the new provision, companies can actually go back to, I think, 2014 to claim NOLs. So earlier they couldn't go back. So if you had taxable income in the past periods and paid income tax on it, now, if you had a loss in 2019, you can go back. If you have a loss in 2020, you can go back to those years, and you can actually get money back as a tax credit on the income tax that you've already paid. So those are the things that you really should be looking at and talking closely to your advisors who can help guide you in these very technical and messy areas.
Sure. Folks, we're speaking with Neeti Dewan, and Neeti is the CEO of Global Platinum AdvantEdge. Now, Neeti, let's talk about the work you do with entrepreneurs as individuals. And you call yourself an executive yogi, which I love. What does that mean? Tell people what that means.
Sure. So in traditional India, a yogi is somebody who's a wise person. So I grew up in India as a child, and I came to the U.S. as a young teenager. And so I've worked all my life here. And as an executive, I know the stresses that people have to deal with. And we all know that an executive is a leader in a business. So I coined the term the executive yogi, because at first, these two seem to be opposites of each other. But in fact, they're not. One side of it is the business side. The other side is the internal, your personal development side, your peace and your balanced living. If you put these two together, you have exponential success. And that means you are well balanced. You're successful in not just your business and career, but also your personal life and your individual development.
And so you've actually written the book on this. So tell us about your book. And the title of the book is From Executive to Yogi in 60 Seconds, right?
Right.
So that's all I need. 60 seconds. As long as I've got your advice, right?
That's right.
Okay.
So people are often ask me, John, what can you really accomplish in 60 seconds?
Right.
The fact is, you can accomplish a lot. And the way you do that is, in those 60 seconds, when you're being confronted with a challenge, with a certain stress, instead of reacting immediately, what you do is stop for a sec, think about how you're going to respond to that, and then respond. So basically, when you start doing this over and over again in your life, it teaches you not to be compulsive. So you learn to stop, think, and then react to something. And you have so much better outcomes. And in those 60 seconds, I often tell people that when you're in a very stressful situation, you need to stop and take a deep breath in. Okay? So you breathe. You be quiet. Close your eyes. Open your eyes. Breathe out and smile. Now, that may sound kind of silly, but honestly, I've worked with lots of people, and this simple technique of breathe, be still, and smile does wonders. So,
well, that is, a couple reactions to that. I mean, one is, this is not a Western thing. So, because we're trained in the West to go, hard 100 miles an hour all the time, right? But what you're describing is something that seems deceptively simple for such an ingrained habit.
True. So here in the West, we are taught to go gung-ho, go after what we want, keep pushing hard. But a lot of folks in business, have been doing that for a long time. And we know that it's not working. Why is that? When you talk to business folks, they are stressed most of the time. They don't have time to spend, take vacations, spend time with their family, or have meals by sitting down with their whole family, which is so important. So we know that our traditional way of just go, 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 push, 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 doesn't work in the long run. So when we learn to take control of our mind and our body, it also allows us then to take control of things that are external to us, which is other people, difficult people we run into, customers, clients, and of course, dealing with things like what's going on today, the coronavirus, which none of us expected.
Sure.
And it allows you to become resilient. And coronavirus also, it does not spread on its own. It needs our cooperation, right?
Right.
If we don't give it our cooperation, which means we take care of ourselves, we do some social distancing, we make sure that our employees are safe when they return to work by giving them the right protective equipment, gloves, and so on, and making sure that we don't pack up our places of business and give enough distance to clients. That will allow us to be safe and keep our employees safe, and in turn, keeping ourselves safe. So I always say you have to learn to cooperate, whether it's with a stress outside of you or cooperating with your mind, because our mind is very deceptive. You've got to learn to take that quick 60-second break, think about what we are going to do, how we're going to react, and then react. Makes a huge difference. And if we all learn to do that, this would be a much better place.
Sure. Now, Neeta, you talk a lot about stress in your book and in your practice. So how has stress management changed in a COVID-19 world? Is it the same? Because or there are different techniques that you teach people?
Sure. So, stress has always been around. But the fact is that because of our global economy, because of the impact of very fast innovation that has been happening, we've sort of been on the super stress highway over the last 10 years. And now with COVID-19, it puts a lot more pressures on folks because people are struggling financially. So that's a real concern for people. And besides that, people are struggling with their own minds because they don't have the peace of mind. They are stressed out. So although stress has always been around, I honestly believe that right now, stress is very heightened for people. And it's very important for us to take charge of that and do something. One technique that I often teach people is when you're in a really tough situation, stop for a sec and look back into your life. There have to be certain events that happened, certain things that you did that brought you a tremendous amount of joy. What was so much fun? Look back at those events or people. Now, use them as anchors. Anytime you get stressed out, go back to those 3 anchors in your life. Whether it's, you had a great girlfriend or a boyfriend, somebody who did something wonderful for you, or you had a wonderful experience because you went hiking up in the mountains, or whatever it is. But we have to train our minds to kind of go back to those anchors in life, which were joyful, peaceful. And once you do that, the present moment, which is full of stress, kind of takes care of itself, because those past wonderful anchors anchor into your present when you bring your mind to it. So I'll share a story with you, John.
Yeah, please.
So when I was a little girl, I think I was 10 years old. I was attending an all-girls Catholic school in India. And we used to go out for picnics. And on this particular occasion, all of us girls were lined up. We in our uniforms, in a line, heading out towards the local village for a nice picnic. So as we are going, I had a basketball in my hand, and I loved playing basketball. And I was kind of throwing the basketball back and forth, dribbling it, enjoying it. And then all of a sudden we heard some of the villagers shouting out loud. And they said, the crazy person is here. Everybody run, take shelter. And I had no idea what was going on. So the nuns in my school, they were scattering around. The girls were scattering. People were pulling them into the local huts to keep them safe. And when I looked back, I realized that there was a wild elephant on the run. It was speeding towards us. So now as all the other girls are running, I somehow was stuck and mesmerized like a deer with headlights. I was just looking at the elephant and I just stood there. Now, as the elephant got closer to me, it stood close to me, stayed into my eyes. I'm staring back into the elephant's eyes. And I don't know what came over me. I took that basketball and wham, I hit it right on its head. And now the elephant starts running and bellows, and I'm running and I'm running and I'm running, and I'm scared, senseless, and I'm running away. And then finally, I don't hear the footsteps anymore of the elephant. So I turn back and I see that somebody had harnessed the elephant and was holding on to them. So the reason I bring up that story is many times in our life, the external events that are going around us, the stressors that we are surrounded by, whether it's business stresses, family stresses, and so on, they're kind of like that crazed elephant, right?
Right.
We think that that elephant is outside of us, or those stresses are outside of us. But truly, it's what's going on inside our head that matters at that time. As long as we can control those stressors in our mind and align ourselves with our mind and body and learn to take that gap of 60 seconds before we react, kind of what happened to me when I stood there for 60 seconds staring at the elephant, we can really harness all our stresses and kind of turn them around and learn to react very positively to them. If not positively, at least react in a well thought out manner rather than being crazy about it. So,
wow, that's a great story. Although I might be, if I'm your client and I see you coming at me with a basketball, I might be a little scared, but no, I'm just joking with you. But no, that's a great metaphor, because there's so much in our lives that creates noise and distraction that is really not inside ourselves. It's really outside ourselves, but we don't recognize the difference, right?
Yep, very true. Very true. And, most of us wear our busyness and our stressed outness, as I call it, as a badge of honor. Oh my God, I am so busy. If somebody asks, oh my gosh, I am so stressed out. As if that's a badge of honor. Wow, I'm doing so much. Look at how much stress I'm carrying. That's not right. In terms of that, we're almost reacting compulsively. We're compulsive busy, and people think that they're enjoying it, but that's not really true. It takes dire effects on your stress, on your body, on your family who's around you. They can all feel that stress. Now, if we just stop and take that gap between the thought that we had and what we're going to do, it allows us to really focus on the results that is going to be created by the actions that we take. So then we become more thoughtful about those actions that we're going to take. What I'm going to do today, how will it affect my employees? How will it affect my business and its growth? How will it affect my family and my friends? How will it affect my personal relationships? And honestly, when we are all done with this life, when we look back, that's what is really what's going to count. It's our legacy. Right. Sure. I focus a lot on helping my clients in these trainings on creating that legacy for themselves and for their businesses.
Folks, we're here with Neeti Dewan, and Neeti is the CEO, I should say, of Global Platinum AdvantEdge. Global Platinum AdvantEdge, and she's an outside CFO along with an executive yogi, and we might say, in Western lingo, executive coach. So how do you work with people? I mean, how does a engagement get going? I mean, somebody that's heard this that would like to be in touch, how does that conversation proceed?
Sure. So John, they can reach out to me directly through the email as well as through my website and phone. And what I would do is find out what the needs are of the business in terms of how many people you're looking to train, whether it's a certain set of employees, whether it's your executive board directors or a set of C-suite employees. So I have specific trainings around that for each group. And the trainings can be on site at the businesses, or they can be off site, depending upon the needs of the business. And they can be customized to you, where they are from half a day all the way to a 2.5 day full-blown retreat and training for these employees.
That's great. Neeti Dewan, she's with Global Platinum AdvantEdge. Neeti, this has been great, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. For those that would like to be in touch, whether by email, phone, what have you, tell them how they can get in touch with you.
Absolutely. They can reach me at my phone number, 404-444-5169, or via email at Neeti, Neeti, at neetidewan.com. So you can go to my website. There's a form that you can fill out and reach me also.
Neeti Dewan, and she's with Global Platinum AdvantEdge. Neeti, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Folks, just a quick reminder that Renaissance Bank, even though we're still not in the branch, in our normal studio there, we still love the folks at Renaissance. So check them out. They've been very helpful with PPP and other SBA-related loans for small businesses right through here. I know that personally because I've worked with some of those folks. So give them a call. you will still need to give them a call to set up an appointment to go in person. So the branches are closed just to walk-ins, but they are taking in-person visits inside the branch. They just need to make an appointment in advance. And you can also go through the drive-through at any time during normal business hours, and they'll be happy to help you there. RenaissanceBank.com is where you can find more information on the 190 or so locations throughout the South. So check them out. Renaissance Bank, understanding you, member FDIC. And folks, we are on all the major podcast apps with North Fulton Business Radio. You can check us out on Apple Podcast, Google, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube. We're on all of them. So just check us out there. And also you can go to northfultonbusinessradio.com and find our archive of shows. We're now 4 years old. So we've been around a while. So we've had over 500 guests, great business leaders like Neeti who have been with us over those years. And check us out on social media. Connect with us there, Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn. We're at North Fulton BRX. So for my guest, Neeti Dewan, I'm John Ray. Join us next time here on North Fulton Business Radio.